Welcome to MFSN's Waiver Wire Show. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, your host. I'm here as always with Fantasy Pros expert Andrew Seifter and Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and I want to talk fantasy waiver wire with you, cowboy.
You're dressed appropriately for it. Wearing
I got my
jersey.
Las Vegas, because the Raiders lost so bad yesterday. I'm wearing my Las Vegas Knights hockey jersey just to remember why you don't bet the Raiders anytime they play.
This shows you how little I know about hockey. They won the Stanley Cup? Is that right?
They never won the Stanley. No, they never won the.
Oh,
Stanley
they lost.
They made it to the Stanley.
They made it to the finals, and they lost, but they never
to the Washington Capitals, I believe.
To the Capitals.
I think that's right.
And last year it was Tampa Bay, but they were Dallas was the team from the West.
I used to pay a lot more attention to hockey. I'm going to start again now that my kids are old enough.
We will when we can talk hockey season.
Guys, this was the craziest week in football history, and we're talking about hockey. What's going on here?
I know, Andrew. Can you just give us like a rundown what happened over the weekend and how crazy it was? Because you and I were texting, and I just couldn't believe every half hour there was something else going on. Let's review it. Go.
Now, viewers, I should say I was on this text chain, but for Ross, it was just he was locked in on Andrew. Okay,
I was locked in on Andrew.
Well, it was hard to even remember everything that happened. I mean, even like the kind of things that usually are the big news of a weekend, like Julio Jones, is he going to play or not, game time decision. Those kind of things just weren't even front of mind for anybody because of whether, just the number one craziest thing obviously has to be the Denver Broncos situation. I mean, to have all three of your quarterbacks have to go on the COVID list and to call up a guy off the practice squad who was a wide receiver who played a little bit of college quarterback for Wake Forest, but he wasn't even like a very experienced college.
And Andrew, a month ago, he was selling computers.
Right,
he was selling computers a month ago.
Listen,
he was a salesman.
Kurt Warner was bagging groceries, but Kurt Warner.
Yeah, but he played in the Arena Football League. It's a totally different thing.
Right. I mean,
yes,
this guy,
I agree.
And this guy had, Kendall Hinton. He had wide receiver eligibility in a bunch of leagues. So then people are asking the question, well, I would never play this guy at quarterback, but would I play him at wide receiver? And, there was a lot of varying opinion about that. I thankfully, I picked him up in a bunch of leagues, and I waited for news to hear more about how they were planning to use him and looked into some of his skills and his highlights. And ultimately I decided I was not going to hop on that bus. So I dropped him in all my leagues right before kickoff. And one of my friends, he pestered me about it. He said, "Oh, come on. Why do you have to pick him up and then keep him away from the rest of us?" And I was like, "I'm saving you from yourself, buddy. You'll see."
Well, talking about quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's not our number one waiver wire pickup.
Or our number 5.
Even though he threw
32.
for 13 yards.
And I do commend him. I do commend him. He went out there and he played, and he didn't have any time to prepare, basically. And he was fed to the wolves. I mean, think about it.
This is not a judgment of him. It's the situation was so
No,
crazy.
I felt bad for him. I watched that game, and it was hard to watch.
There was a lot of rough quarterback play. I mean, we had Brandon Allen going. We had, Glennon for the Jaguars didn't do too badly against the Browns.
He was okay.
He did too bad. But listen, Hinton wasn't that much worse than some games I watched Tim Couch. I'm just saying.
Nebraska. I agree with you. Let's talk. Who's my number one quarterback has been my number one quarterback for the last 3 weeks. It's Kirk Cousins. I just feel he has a great schedule ahead of him. If you need a quarterback, you don't want to start Lamar Jackson. He's the guy I waived last week. I'm starting Kirk Cousins. That's my guy. I don't know who else is on the waiver wire that you like better than Kirk Cousins. Who is it? Go.
Well,
Somebody beat me.
I do have someone ahead of him. He's my number 2. He does have a fantastic matchup this week. I think his schedule does get a little bit tougher after that. And my question with Kirk Cousins is just always, they want to run the ball. That's what they want to do.
He's the highest paid quarterback in the league, too. He gets $40 million a year, and that's a lot more money than I make.
He's been putting up great numbers. He's got like 11 touchdowns in his last 4 games. He's throwing for almost 300 yards every week.
Almost. He's been throwing over 300 yards every game.
Sometimes, some not. But
okay.
The point
Who's
is,
your number one?
Well, the reason that he's not my number 1, even though I do think you can make the case Cousins is maybe a better streamer for 1 week, but I'm just really intrigued by Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Fitzmagic. I'm much more excited about Fitzpatrick than I ever was about Tua, to be honest with you. I think that Brian Flores, he sees that team as in the playoff hunt, and he has this excuse of Tua's thumb injury, and he's kind of dragging that out because he realizes that Fitzpatrick gives them a better chance to win football games right now. And we all know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is capable of doing from a fantasy perspective. And they've got a great schedule down the stretch. So I think that if he can hold on to that job, he could be like a top 10 fantasy quarterback for the final month of the season.
I hate to tell you this, but I totally agree with Andrew. I have Fitzmagic number 1, and I have Cousins number 2. But it's not even close with the two of them ahead of everyone else. For me, everyone else was a big drop off this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, then you're getting to like Phillip Rivers or something like that.
I mean, Phillip Rivers will not winning your fantasy league. I mean, a lot of guys.
I have him number 4, but I'm not happily.
So can we just stop and just say, if you don't take
Baker Mayfield and Rivers, you could play in a pinch, but you don't want
Baker, there was first touchdown pass in like 7 weeks yesterday. I mean, he is just not a great fantasy.
But he
quarterback.
missed like his 4th or 5th touchdown pass.
Yeah, but it's just
I mean, I think we're basically at this point, there's only 2 teams left that have a bye, and it's Tampa Bay and Carolina. So if you have Tom Brady or you have Teddy Bridgewater and they're your only quarterback, now probably if you have Bridgewater, you have another quarterback anyway because he was hurt, right? So it's a small audience here, but I think it's definitely Cousins, then Rivers. Otherwise, it's really
not Rivers, Cousins.
Well, Fitzpatrick is first, but I'm just saying, like, to me, there's guys that might have some sneaky value rest of season, and it's clearly Fitzpatrick. And then the other 2 to mention once again are Gardner Minshew. I still think he's going to get that job back sooner or later and could be interesting. And then,
I agree.
And then Hurts with the Eagles. I mean,
I said I have Hurts. And I think is Carr still under 50% or did he move up?
No, he
Derek
moved up.
Carr, he's over 50.
He moved up, and he
we'll
was
get to him in the
last
drop
week.
list.
It was terrible, but he'll bounce back. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's one game. He
had the best game of his life against the Chiefs, and then followed with the worst game of his life. So it's
all right. Let's move
the roller coaster.
Let's move to running backs.
Let's move
see
running
if
backs.
Derek Carr makes some cut lists now that he's above 50%. I think that would be a bit ridiculous.
Nah, it's too soon.
Exactly. He just made it.
Okay, so running backs, you go first.
All right, I'm going to go first. My number 1 running back is Cam Akers. He has the biggest upside.
I agree.
The other running backs on the Rams are starting to fade. This is the guy you want. I told you last week he was one of my top 5. I can't remember.
You
where
were great.
Him,
I give you total credit. And I actually sang the green. I sing let me sing the Cam Akers song. Cam Akers is the place for me. I get allergic.
I hate to throw cold water on your guys' Cam Akers Kool-Aid fest here, but and by the way, I've had him on my list multiple times this season.
Of course,
as well.
we all did.
But here's the thing. I don't believe. Well, fine. I might have too. We'll have to check the tape. But the bottom line to me is that I don't think this situation has fundamentally changed. He actually still played the 3rd most snaps of their running backs last week, and he had a 61-yard run right up the gut where he was basically untouched, which makes his stats look really great. Dan, you've talked last week about, sometimes stats can be misleading. A guy falls down or whatever. I think that was actually an example of that.
I saw that, but here's the difference. The difference is he is a young, he's a rookie with draft pedigree. So but
Darrell Henderson is a 2nd-year player with draft pedigree, and Sean McVay loves Malcolm Brown. He is so
okay. Who's your number 1, Andrew? Who's your number 1 running back this week to pick up if you don't like Cam Akers?
Well, listen, if you want to stash Cam Akers and see what happens, I have him number 2, so I'm not hating on him. I just don't think it's a great week for running backs necessarily, but I do think there's a couple guys that really interest me in terms of plug and play possibilities. One of them is Benny Snell. Because James Conner has COVID. He's not just on the COVID list.
He has COVID, and he's out for at least 21 days, basically.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how long he's out.
I'm bumping him up. I'm bumping him up to 2.
Maybe it's 2 games he'll miss. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, any game we'll see what happens on Wednesday now. Now the game's on Wednesday. But I mean, Benny Snell. Tomlin said he wants him to be the feature back while Conner's
But just remember, guys, Conner did have cancer. And he has pre-existing conditions, so they're not going to push him out there so quickly. I know he's fully recovered. I know he's fine.
With Mark Andrews,
but you got to watch Conner, especially because he had cancer. It's not.
These guys who have serious health issues. I mean,
I'm a doctor. You're a doctor. Like I get mixed up.
You're working on your doctoral degree. So I think you're well on your way.
Even with guys that don't have a pre-existing condition, you can't predict what's going to happen when a guy tests positive for COVID. I mean, we just saw Dobbins and Ingram are going to be back. They're going to play for this game now. So sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long. We don't really know. But as long as he's out, Snell's going to be a really strong RB2 kind of a play. And then another guy in a similar vein is Devontae Booker, who we've talked about on the show before, as a good handcuff for Josh Jacobs. I had him
second and just bumped him down to third.
Yeah, so now Josh Jacobs has a sprained ankle, and the team is they're being optimistic about it right now, but this is the time of the week where teams are always optimistic about these kind of injuries. So we'll have to see. I mean, the practice reports will tell the tale. If he isn't able to practice all week, they're probably not going to play him. And Devontae Booker has looked pretty good in spot duty this season. So, yeah.
And the matchup is just juicy.
Oh my God, Jets!
It's the Jets.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
It's the Jets, and we'll talk about why I'm picking the Raiders defense up. Come very soon, everybody. Don't worry.
Yeah. So to me, it's those. To me, it's those guys. It's Snell and Booker as these plug and play options, and then Cam Akers is the more speculative kind of ad, because I still view him as speculative. And then after that, it's Frank Gore.
How about my guy Balaj?
No. Eckler's back. Eckler got so fine, and Balaj was out last week. Actually,
I know he was, but he's coming back.
Balaj but I don't know.
Is Brian Hill going to get another start?
I mean, that's a tough one, because Hill played more snaps than Ito Smith, but Ito Smith played better than Hill. So the way I look at it is Gurley's status is TBD, and then even if Gurley is out, I don't know which of those guys is a better play for next week. So I'm not in a rush to add the Falcons running backs.
Maybe the most helpful way of talking about it is that you got two plug and play guys in Booker and Snell. You got a high upside guy in Cam Akers. And after that, it's a bit of a crapshoot.
Well, and you have, Frank Gore is if you need a guy to fill your RB2 spot. If you need a guy to run for
74 yards with no touchdown.
I mean, he gets a great matchup. You said playing the Jets is a great matchup. It's actually a better matchup to play against the Raiders in terms of the running game.
I kind of agree with you, but I also kind of don't, because one of the reasons it's not a greater matchup is that Frank Gore, little known fact, is on the Jets.
It's true, but the Raiders are one of the worst run defenses in the league, and Frank Gore you can lock him in for 15 to 20 touches. So he's got a very high floor.
It's just the Jets offense.
Yeah, it's not an exciting play.
74 yards, no touchdown.
He needs to be rostered at this point, I think.
I agree with that.
And then after that, we're back to upside lottery ticket. Who's going to be the next Benny Snell, the next Devontae Booker, and it's the same names we talked about: Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard, Boston Scott. And, one guy I'm interested in now is Deonta Foreman, because if anything did happen to Derrick Henry, Foreman has actually looked really good when he's gotten a chance. It's only a couple carries here and there, but he looks fully recovered, and they have an amazing schedule down the stretch. So it's, Derrick Henry seems superhuman, so it's hard to imagine him getting hurt, but this is a violent game, and any guy can, take one wrong step or get hit one wrong way and blow out a knee or something. So those backup running backs should be rostered now that the bye weeks are coming to an end.
Derrick Henry, top 3 pick next year, yes or no?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Just making sure we're on the same page.
I wish I had some shares of him, because he's going to win. I think he's going to win people some leagues this year. I mean, their schedule, during the fantasy playoffs is incredible, and he's also just the kind of running back that gets better later in the season when the weather gets worse.
Wouldn't you say? Yeah. I would say it's very likely he's going to win some people some leagues. The question is, how often are people going to own him and not win? That's the real question. I mean, this guy is just a beast. I mean,
no, he's something else.
It's starting to remind me of when LaDainian Tomlinson had that season where he just, obviously a very different kind of runner, but the amount of points he can put up, the amount of touchdowns is just, it blows teams
It's scary,
away.
Yeah. Thankfully, there are some other players like that. There's Dalvin Cook. There's Tariq Hill. There's a few guys that can match it.
I dealt Andrew Tariq Hill, but I did get James Robinson, so it wasn't too
James Robinson, man, he's been pretty awesome too.
Let's talk running backs. Right. Let's talk wide receivers.
Let's do running backs all over again. I like it.
Let's say it backwards. Wow, Bob. Wow.
Let's talk wide receivers.
Wide receivers. Okay, I did not feel that it was a particularly impressive list. This was not a great list. I would say for the waiver wire, and it's not that surprising when you get that late in the season, but I would say this is the weakest waiver wire list overall.
Well, definitely for wide receiver, I agree. Usually, what I usually say on the show is I have trouble getting it down to 5 for wide receiver. There's usually like 8 or 9 guys that I have some interest in, and this week it's scraping the bottom of the barrel. Yeah, go ahead.
Barely got to 5.
I'll go first. Yeah. So this week, I'm thinking like who I want to start the next 5 games. Like I'm confident I'll make it to the finals. If I need a receiver to plug in there, if somebody gets hurt, in my mind, I'm like, who can go in there, get a touchdown, maybe get 60 yards. And I was doing my research. I was crunching down numbers. And the person I came up with is Sammy Watkins of Kansas City. I feel Sammy Watkins has the best chance to get you points because his quarterback, you know who his quarterback is? It's Patrick Mahomes. You guys ever heard of him? Patrick Mahomes. He's averaging.
Not only have I heard of him.
Yeah.
Ross, he had 300 yards with 6 minutes left in the second quarter.
I know. And a lot of the yards were to Tariq Hill.
200.
I mean, he is unbelievable. And I feel that Hardman is dropping balls. I mean,
he's fading.
There's confidence.
Although Mahomes said that was his fault.
I don't care what Mahomes says. He's one
of good leadership.
But Sammy Watkins, last year he was the highest paid receiver in the league. Did you know that? No. But what I'm saying is this: I feel if I need a receiver to stash away just in case if some of my guys go down, I feel pretty confident he'll go in there and they might even sit Tariq Hill if the game
that's
means
interesting.
Nothing.
You say stash him in case some of your guys go down. I'm more interested in stashing him in case one of their guys go down, because the reality is with that offense, it's all about Tariq Hill and Travis Kelce. They dominate the targets to such an absurd degree.
I'm not disagreeing.
That I know. You can't really. I had Watkins on my list, and there's another guy that kind of is in a similar vein to me also, and it's Michael Gallup, because both of those guys, I feel like if someone in front of them, if either of the receivers in front of them,
you got
Kansas
Lamb,
City's
you got
case,
Gallup, you got
end, but
I
just think if either of those guys goes down, then suddenly they're interesting from a fantasy perspective.
This is interesting though, because I have a total different receiver. I have a total different receiver. Wait, are you saying Gallup was your number 1, Andrew?
No. My number 1 is Allen Lazard once again.
Okay, Allen Lazard is my number 1.
Allen Lazard. Let me ask you one question about him. I saw he got hit really hard yesterday. He went down. How's his health?
I haven't heard anything about him, missing next week or anything like that. So as far as I know, he's good to go. And he had 6 targets. He caught a touchdown pass. I think they're working him back in. I mean, he came back from core muscle surgery, which is a pretty big procedure. So I think the first game back, he didn't do a whole lot. Last game, he started to get more involved. And also, you saw MVS completely disappear. So I think
I thought he was hurt. Did he play at all?
There. No, he played.
No, he played.
I saw Saint. Is it Saint Brown or Saint? What's his name? Saint.
Yeah, Saint
Equanimous Saint Brown. This is the reason that I have Lazard number 1 clearly, because to me, if you're looking at Sammy Watkins, Allen Lazard is already Sammy Watkins, except better. He's younger. He's in an offense that it's not as good as Kansas City's overall, but his share in the offense.
He's one step higher on the totem pole because they've got the alpha receiver, but they don't. Tanyan is no Travis Kelce, so the number 2 spot is available in Green Bay.
No, although Tanyan is the number 2, Tanyan is the number 2 scorer in tight ends this year.
Yeah, although he had one huge 3-touchdown game and then did nothing for a month and a half.
Like 4 weeks, he did nothing. I still like Tanyan, though. I have him in a couple leagues. I picked him up. I'm happy to start him.
But tight end just.
Oh, I would. Don't get me wrong. I'd be happy to roster Tanyan.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tanyan as a start. I think he's like a 4 or 5 best tight end in the league right now, but that's my opinion.
Let's see what you guys think about my number 2 wide receiver.
I can't wait to hear this.
Nelson Aguilar.
We talked about him. Good receiver.
He's good for about 54 yards. He's probably going to get a touchdown.
That's exactly what he had
in half the games. And he's playing the Jets, so I think this is going to be
good receiver.
A bit of a boom game.
I wouldn't mind plugging him in if I really needed a receiver.
I don't love it, but he's better than what's out there.
I agree. Nelson Aguilar is the Frank Gore of wide receivers.
Write
that
down, Dan. Write that down.
If I have
Nelson
to play,
Aguilar
if I have
is
to,
Frank Gore.
Okay. Yeah. So if I have to fill a starting roster spot this week, I'm happy to play Frank Gore or Nelson Aguilar. But if I already have a good starting lineup and I'm more looking ahead, I would rather stash a guy who's one injury away, like a Gallup or a Sammy Watkins, rather than
there's a guy I would stash before him, and I'm not just saying it because we know him, but Deshaun Jackson is a great guy to add here because there's just not that much value on the wire. He's still injured, but we know from talking to him
Deshaun Jackson told me personally he'll be back for the Arizona game next week. He told me that personally. I'm not making this up. So that being said, I like Deshaun Jackson. I would like to pick him up. I like to see what he can do because I think they need a receiver that's going to get open. And Deshaun gets open, and he's, as we know, he's the all-time in history. He has the most 60-yard plus receptions.
I just think their problems are not the receivers. Their problems is the offensive line and the quarterback play.
I agree. I told everybody to wait Wentz 2 weeks ago.
If you bring in Jalen Hurts and you got a talent like Deshaun Jackson, I'm just saying based on what else is out there and the fact that you can, if you have any injury stashing opportunities in your league, it's good to do.
Deshaun's a great pickup.
I love Deshaun Jackson. I think he's. I've had him on my rosters many times. I'm stashing players in offenses that are performing at a higher level right now. The Eagles just are really not performing at a high level. I'm not sure any receiver could step in and save that offense right now.
No. It's a fair point. So, okay, there's a couple others that I thought were interesting, but it was kind of a poo-poo platter. You got Shenault playing against Minnesota. They've allowed a lot of points to wide receivers. I'm not in love with it. I'd be very unhappy making that start.
The Jaguars
Russell
always
Gage.
have such a murky receiver.
Russell Gage has burned me all season. I mean, he's mediocre.
Listen, I'm not happy about these guys. I'm just saying,
who else do you have? I'll give you mine like really deep.
Last one is Gabriel Davis.
Yeah, that's who I was going to mention. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. You talk about him then.
Well, he's a 4th-round rookie out of UCF, and John Brown's on injured reserve, so he's out at least 3 games. And we've seen that the Bills' offense can support 3 wide receivers, at least to some degree. So I don't expect Davis to quite put up. He's kind of, maybe he'll be like John Brown light. I mean, I see Cole Beasley's role growing a little bit, and Davis maybe being the 3rd option in that passing game. But
Davis played on 97% of the snaps last year.
Yeah, no, he's a full-time starter. That's my point. Like they start 3 receivers. So he's a full-time player, and he's got some talent. He's got. And if I owned him in Dynasty, I'd be very excited right now because he's going to get.
I do own him in Dynasty, and I traded for him.
That's a good one. Wait, there's one more. There's one guy. I watched some of the Jet game. I'm guilty. And
which one are you going for?
You were the one that watched the Jets game?
Which of the 3 Jet receivers are you into?
The one receiver that goes deep all the time, and Donald loves them, and they throw the ball to him all the time is Broussard Perryman. And you're saying, Ross, you're taking a Jet? You know, I'm like, if you're desperate, this guy goes deep all the time, and they might get lucky. Maybe he'll catch the ball a few times. I don't know. But if you need a receiver,
I'm not sure I would.
For receiver, Perryman for the Jets is the guy you should pick up if you're really desperate.
I don't hate it. I mean, to me,
really desperate.
I'm not so anti-Jet.
Really
like I would play a Jet wide receiver if I knew which one to play. The problem I have is that Crowder was the guy early in the season. Mims is the hotshot rookie who makes these big plays every once in a while, and then Perriman is coming on now. So it's sort of like hard to know, and especially because they've gone back and forth between Darnold and Flacco. So I'm still waiting for that situation to stabilize. But
remember,
if
guys,
one of those guys was the clear guy, I wouldn't mind picking him up at all.
The team's desperate. They haven't won. They're not going to the playoffs. Might as well air it out. Might as well just.
Well, they have a bad defense, so they're going to throw the ball.
Might as well just.
I would play Gabriel Davis. I'd play Gabriel Davis over Frank Gore at wide receiver. That's how bad I think the Jets.
Wait, I heard that quote from somebody else. I don't know who said that, but we'll figure that out later.
I don't know.
Should we go to tight end?
I don't even understand it, so
I don't either. I don't know. These quotes don't make sense
if
anymore.
If Gore had wide receiver, I'm going to have to explain it to you.
No. Let's talk about tight ends.
If Gore were a wide receiver, I would not want to start him.
Okay, let's talk about tight ends because I thought the tight end pool this week was pretty good. I mean, I thought that was the strongest position.
Yes, actually, I agree with
Andrew,
that.
you got to back me up. I thought the tight ends.
I agree. I love how he doesn't even care whether
I don't. All I care is about Andrew's blessing, and I feel good about my mistake.
Well, make your case for me. Make your case for me, Ross.
I just feel that under 50%, there's a bunch of tight ends out there that are available. That if you want to win your league, and Dan and I love this guy, Logan Thomas, who just doesn't catch footballs, he throws footballs, and I feel the team of Washington. We talked about this. They have a great shot to win that division.
They do, especially now that Danny Dimes is hurt for the Giants.
Danny Dimes is exactly. I was going to talk about that. So, all that being said, I like Logan Thomas. I like I always get on Andre Jordan. Who's the Jordan Reed?
I still like Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed. Thank you. I get them mixed up.
Jordan Reed is still my number one.
Jordan Reed, I
is
love.
My number one.
I love Logan Thomas. There's a few, those two guys to start with, I think are good because they're probably available in your league.
I still am not the biggest Logan Thomas guy.
I love when you say that, and they'll go out and throw a touchdown, and
we'll see.
Dan and I would get to text you and tell you how you.
He is on my list. He's just towards the bottom of it. My number 2 guy after Jordan Reed is Kyle Rudolph, because I just think if Irv Smith is out, whenever Irv Smith is out, Kyle Rudolph becomes a viable play, and he missed last week's game with a groin injury, and there's no indication he's going to be back this coming week. And Rudolph had a pretty good game. I think he caught like 7 passes for 68 yards.
No, I saw he was good.
And that's exactly what you're going to get from Kyle Rudolph when he's the only tight end in town. Minnesota's a team that likes to throw to the tight end.
Kyle Rudolph has also had good success getting in the end zone, so I could see it. He's my number 4.
Okay.
I have Trey Burton.
Trey Burton was amazing. He was amazing last week. Amazing. I have him as my 3.
Yeah, I have him at 3rd too.
I thought Trey was terrific, and he actually he actually like runs touchdown. They actually for formations where he like runs the ball in, and I mean they have a lot of stuff.
I think he could be a really dynamic player if he played on a different team. The problem is, the Colts are just. Like Frank Reich seems to take personal pleasure in driving fantasy owners crazy.
Listen,
I think because like
here's two ways.
2 Jacoby Brissett goal line rushing touchdowns. Really, your backup quarterback is getting 2 touchdowns when you have 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, 3 wide receivers that people are trying to decide whether they should roster.
I think that there's two other ways that you could use Trey Burton. You could use him as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, or you could use him as the coach of the Jets. And they would be upgrades in both situations.
Here's the best argument for Trey Burton. They have when they run the Wildcat with him at the goal line, they call it the Trey Cat. So I mean, like
Trey
it's got its own moniker. I mean, what else do you need?
So those are the 3 top tight ends that you should pick up. Is there anybody else you guys like? I mean
Jimmy Graham.
I put Jimmy.
Still
I put Jimmy Graham every week.
I don't even bring his name up anymore.
But here, let me just say one thing about tight end. Ross, I agree with you. The tight end was actually the position that stood out in this waiver wire, and that shows you how bad the waiver wire is this week.
I thought running back was way more interesting.
We all know this, Dan and Andrew, that the waiver wire every week it gets worse and worse.
Well,
that's why
I don't know.
That's why
it can fluctuate though. It can. This
late
in the season, it's tough.
The whole thing about the waiver, if somebody gets hurt,
I can't remember when it was. I think it was like week 11. Suddenly there were all kinds of wide receiver picks, and then week 12. This has
been a very weird year for the waiver wire, because I expected it to be more dynamic than ever this year with all the COVID stuff going on, but there hasn't been that many like massive impact waiver wire pickups this season. Just
not long term, yeah.
Yeah, but you never. It could happen just as easily in week 15 as it could happen in week 2. So it's when does one of these behemoth gods of fantasy football tear an ACL or something like that, or as you get later in the season, it doesn't even need to be that major an injury. If they're just going to miss 2 weeks, it could be the semifinals in the championship. So
that's true.
So you never know.
Defense.
Yeah.
Defense.
Yeah, let's talk defense. Okay.
All right.
Now defense, I felt like there was actually a tough choice. There's a clear choice for the play of the week, but there is a defense that I think has 3 games in a row that look pretty good to me. So I was trying to debate between the 2. I ended up deciding, uncharacteristically of me, to go with the team that was not playing the Jets but has 3 great matchups and is a pretty good defense, and that's Tennessee. Tennessee is playing the Browns. It's not a great matchup, but it's a fine matchup.
Okay.
Then they get at Jacksonville and Detroit. So I just think if you're looking for a longer play, you go with Tennessee. If you're only looking for 1 week, you go with Las Vegas.
I could see that. I don't like the matchup against Cleveland very much, and Tennessee has been a pretty bad defense. Like, I'm willing to start a bad defense. I started the Bengals in one league the last 2 weeks, and it actually worked out okay because their matchups were so good. But I get scared playing a bad defense in like a middle of the road matchup. I feel like that's like you get negative points or something like that.
Ross, are you okay with him calling the Bengals a bad defense? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I this year I am. Not in previous years.
I think. Okay.
I agree. If you need a defense this week, I think the Raiders obviously are the team to pick up. If you just need one, if you need, like Dan says, if you need 3 games to have a defense, hopefully you don't. You should pick up the Tennessee. But I'm not a fan of Tennessee's defense either. They give up a lot of points.
I'm not a big fan of them.
And their DBs,
I would play them in those other matchups.
Their DBs get burned a lot. I watched them a lot this year.
I'll tell you which defense I actually like as just their standalone defense is Washington.
I do too, but they're over 50%.
That team had and they're playing Pittsburgh this week. So
they are playing Pittsburgh. You're right.
That's part of the reason they've dipped so low. But maybe that's when you get them and stash them. They've got San Francisco the week after, so maybe that's a better pickup than Tennessee. I don't know. Those were the things I was wrestling with.
I feel like it's a pretty troublesome week for streaming. If you don't get the Raiders, there's not a lot of other great options.
The team of Washington has the best defense when it comes to pass coverage.
Right,
they're number one in the league.
But again, over 50%. I feel like you could. If you're in a pinch, you could play either side of that Chargers-Patriots game. I would rather play the Chargers defense against the Patriots than vice versa, but that's probably not going to be that high-scoring a game. I mean, it's like I don't want to start a defense against Justin Herbert, but if you look at it, the Chargers actually haven't been a bad opponent for defenses either. And then, the Lions get the Bears, so the Bears are a disaster.
You don't love to start Detroit,
again, guys. If you're picking at these defenses, might as well just close your eyes, go on your computer, and pick a defense. That's not.
No, I mean, if you're playing against a team that their offense is that atrociously bad, there's just not that much risk to it. I mean, they're not going to.
Right. I mean, that's why the Raiders are the best. If you're under 50% in your defense, and the Raiders are available, you pick the Raiders up, and then we'll talk about next week.
All right. Let's go to kickers. You know what's weird? It was not a good week in kickers for some reason. I just didn't.
The only one that I love is Jason Sanders for Miami. He had 2 field goals over 50
over
yards.
50%.
Yeah,
I had somebody.
He's over 50%,
but I had him on my league.
Over 50 yards.
But I had him in my league. I picked him up a few weeks ago.
70% now.
Yeah.
No, I had somebody on Twitter make an interesting suggestion to me this week. They suggested creating leagues that are multiple kicker leagues. I call them super kick leagues.
Let's do that next year. Let's do
that.
Because
his point was that there's been so much craziness with COVID and everything that people should be allowed to just pick up a kicker and put them into one of their flex spots.
Oh my God.
That's great. I love that idea.
It's the opposite of banning kickers, I guess.
The kicker I like, he's under 50%. He's been getting double digits the past 3 weeks in a row in fantasy.
Tyler Bass?
Who is it?
Taylor Bass.
I knew you were going there.
He's been money. He's available in most leagues. If you want a kicker, and his schedules, they play indoors. They're going to play in Arizona because they moved the Niner game to Arizona. It's indoors. If you need a kicker, I would be proud to have Tyler Bass on Ross the Boss's team. I don't know who you guys are thinking, but he's
on my list. I don't love the matchup at San Francisco, or at this case at Arizona. I guess. But that's just I think the 49ers are a pretty good defense.
That's why you take them, because they won't get it. They get to the red zone, then they kick the field goal. Red zone field goal.
That can work out. But my preferred strategy is to take teams that are heavy favorites. So that's why I'm going with Jason Myers and Chris Boswell and Mason Crosby. They're all facing NFC East teams. So that's my strategy this week, is take kickers on good teams that are facing NFC East teams.
Those are all good ideas.
I have Crosby and Boswell. I have Gostkowski, which means that he's going to miss a game-winning field goal again. Because I
can't take him. I dropped that guy.
He's had a weird year.
He's I don't know. He's a heartbreaker.
I don't know. I just went by feel.
Is it time? My favorite part of the show.
I think this is our favorite part.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Is when part. Ross the Boss makes crazy predictions. I said Zeke
no,
Elliott.
I said the way predictions. You you also make rules. You like
Zeke Elliott, I said the wave.
Not do things.
Zeke Elliott, I said the wave a couple weeks ago. You guys all laughed at me. Look at the week he had against Washington.
Yeah,
Horrible.
he had a really big week the game before that, though.
Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about last week.
All right.
I'm going to make a roster of all players that Ross cut, and we'll see how they do in weeks 14, 15, and 16.
That's a great idea. We should totally collect that information.
Yes.
You can do it for mine, too.
Lamar
I mean,
Jackson
Le'Veon
was last week. Who should we go? Who quarterback do you think I'm picking this week?
I'm curious who you're going to go with. But before we get into specifics, I just want to talk big picture really quick. So with the bye weeks almost over, I've said this before, and I really believe this. I don't think there's much point in rostering 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends in most leagues. If you have a good starter at those positions, then basically any other player at those positions that you're not using, the trade deadline's over in most leagues, you can cut them. You can cut any quarterback or any tight end that's not starting.
Wait, let me ask you this, Andrew. Would you, in a superflex league, would you cut a third quarterback? Because that's a little bit different. Because you could get to a place where you really do not have a starter. I would not.
Right. I would not do that. I would not. No, because there's not.
Okay.
Right. There's no replacement value on the waiver wire in those formats. And the other thing is, it's not so much about your quarterbacks getting injured, although that can happen as we've seen this year. But the bigger issue is in a super flex league, your second quarterback is probably not that great. So you might want to stream between your 2 other quarterbacks and play matchups. So for that reason, having a third quarterback in Superflex is pretty important.
Actually, I have 4 quarterbacks to win Superflex League, just so you guys know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had 5 at one point.
So my cut at quarterback, that being said, my cut at quarterback, I know you disagreed with me on this before, Andrew. And Ross, you can't have me not say names again because there's only 32 quarterbacks. The top 12
I know who you're going to say.
But Cam Newton is 77% owned. He is ranked 22nd, and it is week 13. You can cut him.
I agree. I agree that you can cut him. I agree you can cut him, but I will still say that if you look at it, that 22nd ranking is pretty misleading because he's had 3 weeks where he was not a quarterback 1, a top 12 quarterback. Every other week he has been. It's just the 3 weeks he wasn't, he was like the bottom of the barrel, like 5 fantasy points terrible because he's really dependent on those rushing touchdowns. So if he doesn't get those rushing touchdowns, it's a disaster.
I agree with Dan 1,000%. If you have Cam Newton, you're not going to win your league with Cam Newton starting. His head's not in the game. I watched him against Arizona. His head's not there right now. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Like I don't have any problem. Like I told you, I don't believe in rostering multiple quarterbacks
but
in a single quarterback league. So if you can pick up Ryan Fitzpatrick or even Kirk Cousins and drop Cam Newton, I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
I also just think Bill Belichick and Cam Newton is not a match that works out. It's just not looking good.
Yeah. There's a lot of quarterbacks. I have a long list of quarterbacks that I would be fine cutting if they're not your starter, and he is on the list. I think it's Carson Wentz, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, Drew Brees, Newton, Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, all of those guys.
Okay, so mine is Matt Ryan.
Okay, go
ahead. Let me tell you why. His schedule, they're playing Tampa Bay twice. They're playing the Saints, and they're playing the Chargers, which is defense is horrible. But they're playing Tampa Bay twice, and they're playing the Saints, who has a good defense. And I just feel Matt Ryan is so like up and down with his games. He's not consistent, and I'd rather, like you said, I'd rather start Fitzpatrick or Cousins.
Yeah, you know what?
I don't know though.
Why?
Matt Ryan is the Falcons are starting to play better since they fired some people, and I think the morale has picked up there. So
but Matt Ryan was terrible last week. I mean, so the thing is that like. He's actually been similar to Cam Newton. He's either been great or terrible most weeks. But the thing about Matt Ryan is it's a little bit more predictable because if you look at it, the games when Julio Jones has played, Matt Ryan's been good. And the games where Julio Jones has not played, Matt Ryan's been bad. So,
but wait, what's the pattern? I'm kidding.
It's all in Julio Jones's hamstring as Matt Ryan's fate, but either way, I mean, I think hopefully if you're a playoff team, you have a better quarterback than Matt Ryan anyway. So,
but out of that list, you said, Andrew, who would you cut first?
Carson Wentz. I mean, like Carson Wentz may not even survive tonight's game with the starting job. I mean, you can't start a quarterback who might lose their job in the middle of a game. That's just the riskiest strategy you could possibly have.
Okay, what's
All
next?
right, let's move to running back cuts.
Okay, so
Ross,
I've said before in running back, I like to
Go ahead.
hoard running backs. So I don't have I would cut every other position before I would be cutting running backs. The only kind of running backs I'm really interested in dropping right now are guys who are mostly pass catching backs. And this goes more for a standard league than a PPR league, but pass catching backs in an offense where there's like 3 different running backs, because that's just not a good recipe. So like I'm looking at guys, my number 1 drop again is Jerick McKinnon. But I think like Nyheim Hines and James White, even though James White scored 2 touchdowns last week, that was really fluky. And
but Hines put up
Hines
good
caught
numbers,
a bunch of
and
passes, but
Taylor's-
Jonathan Taylor was out, and he's going to be back next week. So I think
still would hold on to Hines.
I think that the Colts running back situation has just been a mess all season. And expecting it to suddenly change and have Hines be the one who emerges just doesn't seem likely at all.
Listen, I'm not comfortable playing Hines, but I think he's a more worthy dart throw than
I think
like
starting Hines
Giovanni
is a huge...
Bernard.
But why
Giovanni
would you?
Bernard's,
But why would you bother rostering Nyheim Hines if you're not going to be comfortable starting him? I mean, this is like
I agree.
we're entering the play.
But that's
you're
not
not
the
going to
question.
start Nyheim Hines in a playoff
No.
spot.
That's not the question. The question is not who would I rather roster, because I would cut them both if I could, if I had somebody better. But if I had Nyheim Hines and I didn't have somebody better, and I also had Giovanni Bernard, I'd cut Giovanni Bernard.
Well, but if I needed a running back for next week, I would. With Jonathan Taylor back, I think. I mean, I have to look at the matchups, but I think I'd probably rather start Gio Bernard than Nyheim Hines.
I wouldn't. The thing is this. See, my whole thing is, who rather I start? The guys you're talking about or Frank Gore? Because I know Frank Gore is available in a lot of leagues. So I rather start Frank Gore than the guy I'm cutting, who's Zack Moss. Because I think Zack Moss, everybody's waiting for this huge game from Zack Moss. Everybody's saying, "Oh, this guy's the future. This guy went to University of Utah. He was all Pac-12." You know what? He hasn't done really anything this year except disappoint people in fantasy football. People pick him up
through the week I called him.
Well,
that's
that
the
was
only
it.
time.
No, he's had a few good games. I wouldn't cut either of the Buffalo backs, but I would cut
Singletary. I'm not afraid. I love Allen, how he runs, and I feel he's the best running threat on that team. I feel Zack Moss. If you're starting him, you can put him away. But if you're not starting him and you need to waive somebody, that's the guy you waive. He's not consistent. He's not scoring touchdowns. He's not doing what he's paid to do, is be a goal line running back and score. He hasn't done that in 6 weeks.
Listen, the thing I like about Zack Moss is the role he has, and also just it's a good offense, and there's only 2 running backs. So so if one of them, if Singletary went down, I think Moss would instantly be like an 80% of the snaps kind of a running back. Whereas like I don't see anyone in Indianapolis that can possibly get there. So that's, to me. If it's a simplified backfield with like 2 backs, I want to roster both of them. Same thing with like Leonard Fournette. I wouldn't
keep
drop
Zack
him,
Moss. See how far your team goes.
But
start him.
To me, that the guys I want to stash for dropping these guys are people like we were talking about, those upside handcuffs like Alexander Mattison. Like if I'm not going to put Nyheim Hines in my starting lineup, I'd much rather have Alexander Mattison sitting on my bench than Nyheim Hines.
I agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah. All right, wide receivers. I'm going to nominate somebody. I think that it's time to cut Slayton of the Giants. 74% owned. Danny Dimes has gone down. It's just not.
And Slayton hasn't really. He hasn't really been good anyway.
He hasn't even.
He's had like 2 good games.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree totally.
And Hollywood Brown, I'm still on.
Yeah, he's still over 50. People are really stubborn to drop him.
He's 75% owned still.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of talent, but it's just not translating, and the team is not playing well. And Lamar Jackson's
Willie
not playing
Snead
well.
has become, now he's on the COVID list, but Willie Snead had become a better fantasy option than Marquise Brown. That's how far Marquise Brown had fallen.
Wow.
John Brown is out for 3 weeks. He's on IR, so there's really no need to be holding on to him. Tyler Boyd, I mentioned last week, I was worried about the Bengals receivers with Burrow out, and Tyler Boyd, I now would feel comfortable dropping him. I mean, I think
T. Higgins looks
his
like the
best
only
case scenario is like wide receiver 3, but he won't even get there. Probably.
No, I think Boyd's a good drop. And the other guy I think I would drop is the New England Patriots receiver, Jacob Meyer. I know he had a great game a few weeks ago.
No, I agree.
I mean, he's over 50%. And you know what?
Just barely, but yeah.
Just barely, you're right. But
yeah, I mean, Patriots,
it's just get rid of him.
His scoring upside is so low.
It's just not an offense. It's not a passing game you want to be invested in. And once Demir Bird popped up for that big game, it was sort of like, okay, well, now we don't even know that Myers is going to be getting 10 to 12 targets every week. So that's pretty much what he needs just to be a wide receiver 3. So yeah, I agree. He was on my list. And then another guy, Ross, I know we've both hyped up a little bit in the past, but I think his window could be now closing, is Marvin Jones. I don't know what Kenny Galladay's status is, but that passing game has not been great anyway.
Horrible.
And I do think Galladay is going to be back before the end of the year.
I think Jones is cut too. And how about this guy for Kansas City, Tariq Hill? Do you think we should cut him, Dan?
I'm going to hold him for at least 52 weeks.
You heard it first. Dan is holding on to Tariq Hill. Ross the boss would cut him, but I'm just kidding, everybody. No. Don't cut
Tariq and I have him in a bear hug. Okay, we're going to tight ends last. Who would you cut? I mean, look, tight ends are so bad. You can cut anybody and pick them up. It's just a revolving door. But I think it's time to move on from Jared Cook, because when Taysom Hill is there, there's just no real upside for him. I mean, you could hold on to him maybe to see if when Drew Brees comes back, he's got a role, but I'm not high on him.
I agree. I also think this one is sort of a bigger name, I guess, but Jonnu Smith, I think, has just become like a glorified Jimmy Graham. I mean, he needs to score a touchdown to pay off. Otherwise, he's going to get you absolutely nothing. I mean, he has not had a big yardage game in 2 months or more. I mean, it's just purely like you're hoping he catches a touchdown.
I with tight end, it's a crap. Every week you just close your eyes and pick one. It is no definite tight end except Kelsey and except Kittle, but he's hurt and Andrews is hurt. So there's not many.
And I think Tanyan is worth playing most of the time.
Tanyan right now is like the 2 or 3 tight end. You're
Waller, right. There's some guys, but yeah, I mean, like pretty much guys like Austin Hooper. I mean, if you're not starting them, you don't need to roster them. And then there's, people are so desperate that like Tyler Higbee is still over 50% rostered, even though he hasn't had a good game since week 3.
Week 3,
Zach Ertz, people held through his whole IR stint.
I do like Hunter Henry. I do like Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, I do. He's in my top 5.
He's pretty solid. I mean,
like Hunter Henry.
It's interesting because I think there's a ripple effect when guys like Rob Gronkowski stop performing and Zach Ertz stops performing. Suddenly,
Ron's having a great year, though.
He's having a fine year.
He's like a top 5 tight end this season. He had 100 yards last week. I mean,
but that's not the same thing as it's been. What I'm saying is, the teams that own those top tier tight ends, there are less teams vying for these guys, but there's just almost nobody out there. There's Kelsey and nobody else.
I mean, having Kelsey on your team is a huge advantage you have of any other team in fantasy.
Yeah, totally. Yep. He's maybe the most impactful.
I mean, Dan I picked Kelsey in the second round, and Dan laughed at me. And now who's laughing at Dan? Oh, you didn't? I thought that was you.
Not.
I guess not.
Well, okay. It's funny, like the crazy numbers that like Tyreek Hill put up last week, or that Dalvin Cook has put up, or Derrick Henry. Like, what's the tight end equivalent of that? It's basically like 120 yards and a touchdown is like so much more than any other tight end.
You're right.
It's so much more. All right, guys. I think we've done our job. This has been MFSN's Waiver Wire Show. Ross, tell them how to subscribe.
What you do is you go to our YouTube page, you check it out, you press the bell, and you subscribe. It's that easy. And you know what? We have some great shows coming up this week, and I can't wait for you guys to see our new show on Saturday. It's going to be great. And I'm Ross the Boss, and I love talking waiver wire with you, cowboy.
If she could see who was under the blanket with me, I said, you don't want to find it is Hideki Matsui.